There's a powerful teaching in Psalm chapter 1 verse 3 that I want to share with you today. It says, "He shall be like a tree planted by rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper." Stick with me until the end of this video because we're diving into some life-changing truths from this psalm. Trust me, by the end, you'll discover how being rooted in God can help you thrive and bring real transformation to your life. Now, at first glance, this might sound like a nice image. Who doesn't want to be compared to a strong, healthy tree, right? But let me tell you, there's so much more to this verse than just a pretty metaphor. This is about living a life that's deeply rooted, constantly nourished, and destined to bear fruit no matter the season. Let's break it down together, and I promise, by the end of this, you'll see just how much this applies to your life. First, let's talk about what it means to be planted by rivers of water. Picture it for a moment. A tree doesn't choose where it's planted, right? It grows where it's rooted. And if it's rooted in a place where there's no water, no nutrients, or harsh conditions, it's going to struggle. But this verse tells us that the person who delights in the law of the Lord, who meditates on His word day and night, is like a tree planted in the best possible spot, right next to rivers of water. That's important. We're not just planted anywhere. God has strategically placed us where we can receive the nourishment we need. And what's that nourishment? It's His word. Just like that tree absorbs water through its roots, we absorb life and strength from the Word of God. The more we're rooted in Him, the stronger we become. Think about it. If you're not rooted in God's Word, if you're not planted in His truth, then what are you rooted in? The world? Opinions? Temporary things that won't last? Those things won't sustain you when life gets tough. They dry up, they fade away, and you're left feeling empty. But when you're planted by the rivers of God's Word, there's a constant flow of life pouring into you. And let me tell you, that makes all the difference. No matter what's happening around you, you have a source that never runs dry. You can face challenges, storms, and setbacks, and still stand firm because your roots are deep in God. Now, let's talk about bearing fruit in its season. Notice how it doesn't say the tree bears fruit every single day or all year round. It says it bears fruit in its season, and that's key. Sometimes we get frustrated because we're not seeing results or things aren't happening as quickly as we'd like. We start to wonder, why am I not seeing the fruit of my efforts? But here's the thing, fruit has a season. There's a time for planting, a time for watering, a time for growing, and then a time for harvesting. Just because you're not seeing fruit right now doesn't mean you won't see it later. It's all about timing. God has a season for everything in your life, and sometimes He's working beneath the surface, growing your roots deeper, strengthening your foundation before the fruit appears. Don't rush the process. Trust God's timing. I want you to think about it like this. A tree can't force fruit to grow before it's ready. It doesn't stand there stressing out about whether or not it's producing. No, it just stays rooted, and in due time, the fruit comes. The same goes for you. Stay rooted in God, and the fruit will come in His perfect timing. And here's another thing. The fruit will be right for the season. You won't produce fruit before you're ready, and you won't produce fruit that's out of season. God knows exactly what He's doing in your life, and He's preparing you for the right time, the right opportunities, the right impact. You just need to keep trusting Him and staying connected to the source. This part of the verse is so encouraging. Whose leaf shall not wither. Now let's think about that for a second. A tree's leaves are a sign of life and health, right? When a tree's leaves start to wither, it's usually because something's wrong. Maybe it's not getting enough water, maybe it's being attacked by pests, or maybe it's in an unhealthy environment. But here, we're told that the person who's rooted in God, who's planted by rivers of water, will not wither. Their leaves will stay green, full of life, no matter what's going on around them. What does that mean for you and me? It means that when you're rooted in God, you don't have to fear dryness. You don't have to worry about running out of strength, out of joy, out of peace. God's supply is endless. His strength never runs out. And when you're connected to Him, He continually renews you. I'm not saying you'll never face hard times or go through dry seasons. We all do. But even in those times, your leaf doesn't have to wither. You can still have joy, you can still have peace, you can still have strength, because your source isn't this world. Your source is the living water that flows from God. Here's where it gets really exciting. And whatever He does shall prosper. Now, this isn't some kind of prosperity gospel promise where we think, oh, if I do everything right, God's going to make me rich and successful. That's not what this is about. When the Bible talks about prosperity, it's talking about flourishing, about thriving in what God has called you to do. It's about walking in His purpose and seeing His hand of favor on your life. When you're rooted in God, when you're nourished by His Word, and when you're living in alignment with His will, whatever you do will prosper because it's connected to His plan. Think of it like this. A tree that's planted by rivers of water, that's rooted in good soil, is going to produce fruit naturally. It doesn't have to force it. The same goes for you. When you're connected to God, living out His purposes, you're going to see fruit in your life. You're going to see success, not in the world's definition, but in God's definition. You're going to thrive in the areas He's called you to thrive in. Now, that might not always look like material wealth or outward success, but it will look like spiritual prosperity. You'll have peace, you'll have purpose, you'll have joy, you'll have an impact on the people around you. And let me tell you, that's worth more than anything this world could offer. Let's bring this home. There's so much in this one verse, but it all boils down to this. Where are you planted? Are you planted in God's Word? Are your roots deep in His truth? Because if they are, you're going to thrive. You're going to bear fruit. You're going to prosper. But if you're planted in the wrong soil, if you're relying on the world for your nourishment, for your strength, for your peace, then it's going to be a struggle. The world can't give you what you need to truly flourish. Only God can do that. So, I want to encourage you today. Take a moment to evaluate where you're planted. Are you spending time in God's Word? Are you letting His truth nourish your soul? Are you trusting His timing for the fruit in your life? Because when you're planted by the rivers of God's living water, you're going to see things start to shift in your life. And remember, it's a process. Trees don't grow overnight. They take time. They go through seasons. But if you stay rooted, if you stay connected to God, you're going to see the fruit. You're going to see the leaves stay green. You're going to see prosperity, not by the world's standards, but by God's. This verse is about living a life that's deeply rooted in God. It's about being nourished by His Word, trusting His timing, and walking in the purpose He has for you. When you do that, you'll be like that tree, strong, steady, fruitful, and flourishing no matter what life throws your way. So stay planted, stay connected, and watch how God brings fruit into your life in His perfect time. If you're ready to keep growing and seeing real transformation in your life, don't stop here. Make sure to watch the next video. May God bless you.